Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. So I am in the Costco parking lot because it's actually a very short story. We have a nail in one of our tires, the new tires that we bought. I know, it was like lovely. So anyway, they're going to replace them for free, but we're in Austin, Texas, and we unfortunately went to a Costco that didn't have the little plug things that go underneath the vehicle to lift them up. So then by the time we got to the other Costco that had the plugs, they had a huge line. So who knows if we're going to get out Austin today. We should already be 4 or 5 hours on the road at this point, but no such luck. So anyway, not what I wanted to talk about, but apologizing for the fact that I'm yet again in the car and potentially a little bit scatterbrained because it's been a heck of a morning already with the nail in the tire. So anyway, if you're interested, I just ordered a set of plugs. They're only like 28 bucks. I'll put a link to that in the description. We also did get to use that little kit that we had, the blow-up kit. I did not expect to be using that anytime in the near future, and we used that last night to blow up the tire so that it wasn't too low when we, so we were able to drive around. It's a very slow leak, but you certainly don't want to be driving around on a flat tire because that will ruin the tire after a period of time. So anyway, all that stuff is good. What I wanted to talk about today was Elon Musk's discussion about the X holding company, his 3 companies that he has. Everyone just kind of assumed that they were constructed to purchase Twitter as a corporation thing. It's kind of a goofy system, but anyway, I don't understand it. I'm not like into that kind of law, so I don't exactly understand the nuance of all that, but it seemed like him having holding corporations that other people could fund was a way for him to purchase Twitter. But clearly during his speech at the Tesla annual shareholders meeting last Thursday, he talked about how he has a much grander vision for X holding companies, the 3 of them, and how Twitter would accelerate that vision 3 to 5 years. And it started me thinking. I looked at the comments that people left on the last video that Scott and I did, and we were talking about it. And I basically started to think about, wait a second, this is interesting. What we could be looking at here is what I would call sustainable philanthropy. So I don't know how much you know about the philanthropic scene, but philanthropy in general is sort of like just sucking down money off somebody. It could be a private foundation, it could be the taxpayer, etc., but like basically taking money from somebody to do something good. So you look at like the Bill Gates Foundation, he and a bunch of other people fund that, and then they provide money for people to do things. And when people talk to Elon Musk about what his philanthropic impulses are as he gets older and rich and has a lot of money, and he says, I consider Starlink, Boring Company, Tesla, and Neuralink, and probably OpenAI too, even though he's not really actively involved in that, as philanthropic types of activities. That he's basically saying that those things are philanthropic because what they're doing is that they are helping out humanity, right? His idea is that Tesla is helping to create a sustainable future for all of us to live on this planet longer and in a more sustainable way. And in the meantime, SpaceX is looking at going to Mars and creating humanity, civilization 2.0, kind of a fail-safe system. In the long term, obviously that will take a long time, but that's the long-term vision for that. And then of course, Boring Company, the idea is to create better traffic so that the soul-sucking traffic that happens to pretty much all of us in our daily lives is reduced. So that's a plus. And of course, I expect that'll be used on Mars as well. And then of course, Neuralink is a company that is involved in creating linkages between computing systems and human beings, which in the short term is going to be very beneficial to individuals with injuries and other things. But in the longer term, the idea is to create better cyborgs for us humans, because then we get to OpenAI, which is to create a better computer AI future. If and when we hit the singularity where computers become smarter than us, then AI becomes smarter than us. The idea is for us to be there to create a good version of the AI that will take care of us and not, do the Terminator or the Matrix or whatever, any of those science fiction movies, that kind of thing. So the idea is to create a better future in that sense. And that, I believe, is what Elon Musk is talking about here. He's creating these holding companies to create sustainable philanthropy. In other words, a philanthropy that is not sucking money from some other source. So they don't go, please give me money, government, or please give me money, Bill Gates, or please give me money, rich person or foundation or whatever. They're not taking money and then doing things with it. What they are is they're creating good for society at the same time they're actually making money. And that is a huge, huge difference. That is a very, very different philosophy from all philanthropy pretty much in all of history. And the idea here is to create a commercially successful, or what I would call sustainable, philanthropy. Scott Walter, I was talking to him this morning before he left to get on the airplane to go home, and he'll beat us home by a long shot now. But he said, hey, this might be like John Galt or something. And if you don't know, that's from Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. And he was kind of, it's a book about a utopian capitalism, essentially. It's like, if you just let people run amok as capitalists and put no restrictions in their way, then you would end up with a utopia. And it's a little bit silly in terms of like that. It's very idealistic. Let's not say silly. Let's say idealistic. The sense that without any kind of holds barred, that capitalism would do good for everyone in society is pretty much as idealistic as saying that communism would be the best thing for society, etc. But anyway, the character John Galt is very different from Elon Musk because he's very much not a public figure. People know who he is, but nobody knows what he looks like, so they don't know they know of him, but they don't know who he is. Elon Musk obviously is a very public figure that everybody knows about and sees and would recognize on the street if they saw him, that kind of thing. But in the sense of being the ideal capitalist who is doing capitalism for the benefit of humanity, that's sort of what he is. And when he starts talking about how Twitter will accelerate his vision 3 to 5 years, in my mind, what we're sort of looking at here is a holistic approach to not just creating a more sustainable green Earth that we can all live on, and creating a world outside an Earth 2.0, so it's a backup Earth, things like that, starting our move into the solar system and then hopefully eventually beyond the solar system. But it's also creating a sort of blend between capitalism and philanthropy, doing jobs that are so important and so big and yet still very profitable because you're making really excellent products, that you're doing good for society at the same time as making a profit, and that is sustainable. And that's something that, John Galt, I think, would be behind that, or Ayn Rand, who wrote the character. It would be the idea of somebody who was a capitalist hero, but in the sense of capitalism that would actually be for the good of humanity overall. There's a tendency for people to bifurcate things. They're like, if you're a capitalist, you're bad, you're evil, you're worth billions of dollars, you're default evil and no good, or you're poor and you're good, or middle class and good, or something like that. So there's this bifurcation. And Ayn Rand, of course, was more along the lines of like, the richer you are, the better you are, which again, I think is very idealistic. Don't get me wrong about that. I think that's not the best way to go. But what we're seeing here is a potential for a human being who has the right kind of vision to be able to create businesses that are profitable, but at the same time do good for humanity in different ways. And of course, it's a grand vision. He even said that in his talk. He was like, this is a grand vision. I feel awkward about even mentioning it, but I have this big idea. And so obviously social media and maybe crowdsourced truth, things like where on a version of Twitter 2.0 or something, where there could be some sort of crowdsourcing veracity, so that people would say like, no, this is, if you have enough up and down votes or something like Reddit, you could say it's unlikely that this is true because this situation seems to be that this would be something false and you should, take this with a grain of salt. Or 100,000 people have looked at this and given it a thumbs up, and it's very likely that this is true. So crowdsourced veracity is definitely one of those things. And the reason why I could see him saying that Twitter would be an accelerant to that is because you've already got the group of people, the critical mass of human beings who utilize it already. Now, obviously, it would have to get bigger over time, and it would have to involve more people, obviously, in order to become even larger. Beyond that, of course, we've got his early days of Zip2 and PayPal and X Corporation, which again, I think that's what it was called, X something. But he's always had this idea of like X Corporation, but that we would also be able to use money. We would be able to have a monetary system that was also based in these apps. So in a way, again, for philanthropic good, to have a banking system that was wrapped up in social media, but was also being decentralized and controlled outside of that, would accept, you know, cryptocurrencies, fiat currencies, whatever. So again, you can see how this vision of creating a business model that was also good for humanity and keep growing that to, you know, absorb everything that you can absorb. And of course, this gets back to things that I and many other people have talked about, which is that Tesla / X holding companies could eventually become CHOAM from the Dune series. I'm not going to try to remember. It's Combined Honda something over something mercantile. Anyway, it's an acronym, but the idea is that they pretty much own all the commercial things. Now, they're not particularly philanthropic in their endeavors, but you know, you could have a philanthropic version of CHOAM so that it's making a profit, it's able to sustain itself without having to go and beg for money from other people, but at the same time, it's actually doing businesses that are helping humanity out. So anyway, that's just a guess. It's kind of crowdsourcing a little bit of stuff and thinking about this for a couple of days, but that would be my guess as to what Elon Musk is attempting to do. He's trying to create sustainable philanthropy in his activities, all of them, and that's sort of the umbrella vision that he has, however you want to slice that pie. So anyway, I'd be interested to know what you all think about that. This is obviously evolving in completely speculation. I don't have, you know, don't have a neural link into Elon Musk's brain, so clearly I don't know exactly what he's thinking, but it seems logical that that would be the case. Wish us luck for getting this tire fixed so that we can actually get on the road and get back home again. And obviously, as soon as we get back home again, I'll be back in my studio. But in the meantime, everyone have a lovely day. And don't forget, if you want to get the plugs or the emergency kit, just check out the links in the description. And I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.